All right. Well, welcome everybody. Let's jump right to it. Matthew number 2 has an appointment at 2:00, right? So
I do.
we're gonna try to keep the hour pretty tight. But we're right at Matthew 5:21 through 26, and this is where Jesus begins to detail the commandments, right? And it's very straightforward. Just on the surface, we recognize that there's this kind of the surface observation of the law, and Jesus drives it right to the heart. And there's 4 or 5 of these issues. And so as you move through these kind of systematically in the weeks ahead, I'm going to work hard to kind of pull out particular aspects that are important to each one. For all of them, Jesus is simply saying, hey, not just the external observance, but internal dynamics. Okay, that's going to be common for all of them, but I think we can pull some stuff out that's unique to each of these things. So the first is, the association of murder, that, thou shalt not kill, external to the internal heart issue of anger, right? And insult. So let's pray and we'll jump right to it. Lord Jesus, thank you for the blessing of being together. And I just ask as we share together, be with us and encourage us, challenge us as we're right in the middle of the purgative way. Lord, help us to realize more and more and more how desperately we need your help. So move among us, Lord, as we share together in your precious name. Amen.
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 Okay. Christian is getting married this Saturday, and then he's on honeymoon. So we expect to see him back in maybe two or 3 weeks. But that's all exciting. All right, so let's jump right in. Matthew 5:21 through 26. Somebody got the Bible open? Can read that for us?
I got you. You ready?
Yep.
All right. You have heard that it was said to the ancients, do not murder, and anyone who murders will be subject to judgment. But I tell you that anyone who is angry with his brother will be subject to judgment. Again, anyone who says to his brother, Raka, will be subject to the Sanhedrin. But anyone who says, you fool, will be subject to the fire of hell. So, if you are offering your gift at the altar, and there remember that your brother has something against you, leave your gift there before the altar. First go and be reconciled to your brother, then come and offer your gift. Reconcile quickly with your adversary while you are still on the way to court. Otherwise, he may hand you over to the judge, and the judge may hand you over to the officer, and you may be thrown into prison. Truly, I tell you, you will not get out until you have paid the last penny.
I like that transition. Lifts out at least one detail that is important for us to discuss. But straight up, Jesus refers to the 6th commandment. Thou shalt not kill, or thou shalt not murder. Okay, and just to appreciate, just to name it, really gets at one of the top values that's revealed in the Old Testament, and that is the value of life. The Hebrew scriptures take life absolutely seriously, and you see that in the rituals of cleansing. If you touch a dead body, you're unceremonially unclean, and that lifts up the value of life. The passage in Leviticus chapter 17, talking about prohibiting eating blood, because the life is in the blood. The books of Moses make a real effort to anchor our shared life together with a high value around life. And that's why the abortion issue continues to be just a major concern. Certainly the sanctity of life, but just the recognition that life itself is sacred, and we don't have any business, touching it. Any thoughts about that? That's pretty straightforward.
Is this also where we get like traditions that are rooted in pacifism? Just that understanding of life, value of life, and
yeah, it absolutely is. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep, absolutely. And the Anabaptists, oftentimes we're pacifists, taking that very, very seriously. And that's where you run into competing values, right? Justice. And, do you kill to protect the life of another? Right? All that stuff is deep in all wrapped up in that. Yep.
Yeah. That's why I mention it, because for me, that's where it gets more complicated. Capital punishment is another one that's just always turns my gears a little. So
That's right. Okay, so recognizing the high value of life. The other value, which is a little more elusive to get a hold of, but I call it the creational dynamic of relationship as essential to our identity and our life. We do not have existence apart from God, nor apart from one another. Okay. In 1923, Martin Buber, who was a Jewish philosopher, wrote the classic I and Thou. And in it, he talks about two different modes of being in the world. The first, and he characterizes the modern problem as being, I, it, the I, it mode of being. That's where, the self relates to objects around them in order to understand, to analyze, to hold at a distance, to control, and to, manipulate, and that's anybody in the trades has the I, it mode of being with, with his tools and with the materials that he's working with. And that's very, very, familiar. Problem is when we bring that I, it mode of being into our relationships with people, and the familiar term, the objectification of women. That's how that term is usually used. And I want us to explore that a little bit deeper in just a few minutes. But when we bring an I, it mode of being into relationship with people, that gets dicey. It's easy to slip into, when you go to the grocery store and you're dealing with the person at the cash register. Really easy to treat the person at the cash register as an extension of the cash register.
Yeah.
Right. That person has a very clearly defined role, right? You have a very clearly defined role when you're passing your groceries through. And very, very easy to look past the humanity of that person in this I, it mode. And I think, and as we kind of continue talking today, I think we are going to see that there's a whole lot of I, it going around in our contemporary culture. And so as we just touch on, thou shalt not murder, thou shalt not kill, lifting up the sacred nature of life, also lifting up the creational dynamic of us in relation to God and to one another, where we don't objectify, we don't, seek to create distance to control or manipulate, but there's give and take. There's the dynamic of mutuality that we talked a lot about when we went through 1 Corinthians. And that, as Jesus takes his first commandment, thou shalt not kill, and deepens it, that's where he's heading. He's checking our sinful predilection to use others to our own benefit, rather than regarding their baseline dignity as a human being, not to be controlled, but to relate in a profoundly different way. So that's where we're going. Any thoughts or questions about that?
Yeah, I heard a great explanation of, I think, where we're heading at family camp this year. The morning speaker talked mostly about parenting. And by day 3, I had stopped taking notes because it was one, just so much information. And two, it just started to feel like this long list of things I was going to fail out as a dad. So I'm like, I'm out. I don't want to take a longer list home. So no. But the real nugget for me was he talked about raising consumers versus raising contributors. And so what you're talking about is, when the cashier is just an extension of the cash register, it's because I'm there as a consumer. I just want my stuff. And you are either the thing that's going to help me get my stuff faster, or your incompetence or whatever is going to, slow me from getting this stuff as fast as I want it. So my lens is I'm a consumer, as opposed to a contributor, that I'm there, to help you out, to contribute to your life in some way. Or, I guess the other, you could come up with a different category of co-heir or co-regent, creational fellow creator or creature. There's what I'm looking for. Co-creature with me, as opposed to just thinking everything is kind of at my service, I suppose. So for me, that's just been really helpful, and as always, it's one of those things that it's the plank in my eye. But even just, thinking about it in terms of my kids, they want stuff, man. I mean, it's just that's the lens. And, if I'm honest, they've learned a lot of that from me, right? Like, I'm thinking about my next thing, but it's just such a helpful thing to, am I consuming right now, or am I contributing right now? And more often than not, it leads me back to the purgative way, because I go, I'm consuming. Lord help me, show me how to contribute. So
okay, that's a huge can of worms, right? America's consumer capitalism. Bottom line is everything. And there's all kinds of movies and stories about the violation. Aaron Brockovich, right? That old what's her name?
Julia Roberts.
Yeah, Julia Roberts. Aaron Brockovich, which took place just outside of Tehachapi, about 100 miles out there in the desert. PG&E,
Hinckley, the town of Hinckley.
Yeah, polluting the groundwater and having disregard for their customers, really, right? And dehumanizing, right? They're a means to an end, the profit margin, and that's writ large, across the American frame of reference. And so what we have, Matt, again, Peyton, can of worms, we've learned to try to seek life out of that it mode of being. I keep thinking, I'm going to get validated. I'm going to get energized. I'm going to get, wisdom. I'm going to get what I need when I control and dominate the things in my life, be they objects or be they people. And that's just tends to be our orientation to reality. And as beings created in the image of God, life comes when I relate to you in an open-hearted way, where there's give and take, where there's honest exchange, where you share your wisdom, I share my best ideas, and the spirit's in that mix, and we come to a greater understanding. And that's energizing. It's refreshing. I mean, that's every rich conversation we've ever had. Kelly and Matt, you were with friends who just had just give birth to a six-week-old child, right? I mean, 6 weeks ago gave birth. I'm sure you guys are talking about what's it like having a newborn in your family, right? I mean, life has changed, right? Life has changed for you with Rio, 9-month-old. Now your close friends have a 6-week-old. Man, you're just sharing life together, and it's enriching and vitalizing.
That consumer contributor, that's definitely a can there. But it's interesting how you're talking about, when I'm even thinking about that consumer mentality, is if we are living out of, which is probably typical, right, in America, when we live out of that consumeristic mentality in pursuit of money or whatever, the moment that someone threatens that pursuit or threatens that pathway to success, or that's when that I, thou, it transition comes where it's like, oh, I will now dehumanize you and turn you into an it so that I can consume, whatever it is, because that person, that desire for blank is so strong that I think that is part of the dehumanization of, well, I need this thing, so I will make you an it and no longer treat you like a thou, right?
Yeah.
And that is, I think, where, Kyle used the word, it gets really dicey. I think we could say that's where it can get violent. That's where it can get dangerous, right? That's where it can turn into life and death, even in that pursuit, that consumeristic culture, that pursuit of, glory or money or fame or wealth or whatever. It can get very dangerous, which that consumeristic contributor dynamic, I think that's great language to complement the I, thou, I, it contrast.
Yeah, and that's exactly where Jesus is going, right? So Kelly or Matt, Mendoza, read verse 22. See what what translation are you guys using?
ESV.
ESV. Okay, that's what I got. So go ahead and read 22.
22. But I say to you that everyone who is angry with his brother will be liable to judgment. Whoever insults his brother will be liable to the council. And whoever says, "You fool," will be liable to the hell of fire.
Okay. So, right, objectifying, right, Matthew, as you're describing. Now, the other Matthew, Peyton's translation, use raka. New King James is going to use raka. King James is going to use raka. And raka is one of those Aramaic words that pops up every once in a while in the New Testament. Maranatha, come Lord Jesus. That's an Aramaic word. We're going to see another Aramaic word when you can't serve God and mammon, which is usually translated money. But the whole rest of the gospel is written in Greek, and all of a sudden you come across this Aramaic word, and you got to stop and say, and then the translator has to decide: do I leave it in Aramaic the way Matthew left it in Aramaic, or do I translate it? And different translators are going to do different things. But raka, onomatopoeia, the word that sounds like it is, it's an onomatopoeia. When you got a, hakalugi, it's spittle to be ejected out of your mouth. That's what that insult. ESV says, speaks an insult, or, insults. And it says in the original language, says raka. Completely dehumanizing. That's what Jesus is getting at when you fail to recognize the personhood of the other, and you would just as soon spit them out of your mouth.
What's interesting, because then there's quite literal instances where you are actually insulting someone. One of the greatest insults would be to spit on someone, right? Like if we've seen videos or seen people get into a fight, it's I'm about to spit on you. Which is like of the biggest disrespect, or of the greatest, what did you do? Just spit on me? Like that. I don't know. That's interesting to even think about. We've seen the movie clips or the TV shows that have a scene like that.
Yeah. It reminds me of at the cross when they spit at Jesus before they killed him. It's kind of that dehumanizing, even like, I'm just going to, like, you don't matter, I'm gonna spit on you. It feels so vile, violent.
Yeah.
I'm thinking too, what you started with, the idea of, Jesus is really going after whatever the internal dynamic is in a person is going to lead to the external action. So don't just clean up the behavior, but go to the heart of behavior. So murder being, all right, now we've got to get back to what is it that leads to murder? It's this dehumanizing anger. And I think even in our own legal system, and I'm not a legal expert by any means, but, first degree murder, second degree murder, manslaughter, right? All that has to do with that premeditation, or that distinction that we try to find between how thought out was this beforehand, what was the intent of the person,
Mm.
You know, it's just interesting. We still wrestle with that in that distinction in the most secular way, but Jesus is really hitting at that here by saying, look, you've got to trace this back to your own heart. And
Yeah.
it's that anger issue. It's the thoughts that you're meditating and manifesting that come out just as words, which, you know, again, I think there's that part of us that go like, well, I just said something and it hurt the person, right? But it's you know, and gosh, it's just a list of my greatest hits today. You know, I just think of like, yeah, my words.
Yeah.
You know, and I would say, well, it's just words. I just said that. I didn't mean it, you know, but
yeah,
it does great harm.
And I don't know, I can't quote the verse, but, or how you might be able to, what is it? What overflows out of the heart is where like the mouth speaks, essentially.
Yeah.
What overflows out of your heart is what your mouth, so whatever your mouth is saying is a reflection of what is going on in your heart. And even, yeah, it's like what he just said, you know, oh, whoever just says you fool will be liable, you know, to the hell of fire. Like, it's like that's kind of extreme. You know, if you just say you fool, hell of fire, it's like, really? That's pretty. And then you're thinking about, oh, it's just words. Well, Jesus' connection here is connecting it to you'll be liable to the hell of fire. You know, what you might call just words, they are not just words. Like, they are a reflection of what's going on in your heart. And Jesus is clearly saying, like, this is a huge deal. This isn't just words here.
Yeah, and that, in fact, when we get into the next section, it talks about lust. I was going to dial in more intently on the whole what's with the desire, passion thing anyway.
Yeah.
You know, crime with passion, murder, right? It's very much connected. You know, the habits of thought. You know, cultivating. I mean, if feeling is a function of habit, oftentimes. We can't change what we feel directly, but we can change what we feel indirectly by how we, you know, direct our attention and how we think about things. I mean, that quality of transformation. And that's what Jesus is going to get into in this I need help, as we recognize these intense feelings. You know, you fool, or raha, that hell of fire. I think that's what ESV says, right? The hell of fire. The original language is Gehenna. Gehenna.
Yeah.
And I think King James, you know, just leaves that untranslated. That has a horrible history in Israel. That's when those evil kings would sacrifice their children and deliver them, pass them through the fire is the language. I mean, 2 Chronicles 28, 1-3, 2 Chronicles 33, 5 and 6. We don't have to go there. If someone's listening and you want to look that up, it happened in the valley of Hinnom, which by Jesus' time is called Gehenna. Oh, bad. Deepest violation of what the Lord would have of these Judean kings, right? And so when Jesus says, you know, fires of Gehenna, I think that is the strongest expression of condemnation out of Jesus's mouth.
Wow.
It'd be really hard to find something stronger than that, right? As Jesus is checking our tendency to dehumanize, depersonalize, you know, objectify those who stand in our way of getting what we desire. Oh, right. Every human being is sacred, not just the baby in the womb, but the mother carrying the baby. So the challenge of recognizing, boy, my orientation to the world doesn't value everybody like that. And that's what Jesus is getting at. And as we begin to get in touch with the ways that we participate in the dehumanization in our contemporary day, simple as the cashier, you know, especially if I'm in a hurry and he or she has taken a little too much time. Okay. So what I wanted to spend some time doing is exploring, man, the crisis of dehumanization that we are in the midst of in our day. And we can just, start with racism, that big nasty issue that continues to, to plague, right? And Matthew, last time you were on, well, not was it last week or 2 weeks ago, where you talked about we talked about the violence against Asian Americans.
I think it was a couple weeks ago. Yeah.
Yeah, a couple weeks ago. And how can somebody do that?
Yeah.
They don't recognize them as human at some level.
And it is, I think that is where I think the I, thou, and I, it contrast, I think that really does help give us some tracks to even talk about racism, or understand how these things happen, right? To treat someone in that way, there has to be a dehumanization that has taken place to be able to treat someone like that. And I mean, there's obviously modern day examples that we could talk about, but we could, just go back into our US history books and see, the dehumanization against specifically, communities of color that has taken place, whether it's then, groups of Native American, tribes, where we quite literally have a story that's referred to as the Trail of Tears. And even when you think about language playing into dehumanization, I think that's something that we need to be aware of. The language that we use, the words that we use to describe people really matter. And I think that's even what's getting into this text. So recently, even there's been conversations I've been a part of where you've heard the word savage, where someone might even refer to someone, oh, that was savage. Where if you think about the dehumanization that took place of labeling Native Americans as savages, then you now have the justification of saying, well, they're savages, so we can, kill them all, right? Which, why we've now taken a human and you've now referred to them as a savage, where that subtle change of language, you've shifted from I, thou to now I, it, and you will now treat them as an it and not as an image bearer. And we could think about words that have been used of the African American community. I'm not going to say the word, but a word that was described to them, back, even still it is used. But there's words there that dehumanize them to the point where in our country, we even consider them to be 3/5 of a person like that. So language there really matters to the point of now you're dehumanizing them based on how you're describing them. And as I mentioned, even with the Asian American community, that has taken place, there's words that are ascribed them that dehumanize them and allow you now to be, whether it's, the China virus or Kung flu, you're now using words like that to dehumanize a whole group of people, which will justify you to treat them as less than, as it's, and not as image bearers, made in the image of God, who the Lord knows the number of hairs that are on their head. The language that is used here, it's subtle, but if you begin to say those things, you've now switched from I, thou to I, it. And racism, I think, when we look at the thing, if we just take a critical eye and see what's going on, even if it's, and I'm going on a little bit of a rant here, but even if you think about like Colin Kaepernick, when he took a knee, then it's shut up and just play the game, shut up and dribble, or LeBron James, right? There's pieces of saying like, just shut up. You are in it. Just entertain us. Just play the game. You're not seen as more than an athlete. You're just an athlete. Or you're just an actor or an actress. Don't give a speech when you win an award and make this political. You're here to entertain us. You're here as just a commodity. Right. These things here specifically make, I would say, communities of color are seen as less than based on the language that is used to describe them. And that's where those are the seeds of racism that, when watered, end up with Asian American women being murdered in Atlanta. That's how you see George Floyd, being murdered, and the police brutality that's taking place all across our country. These are little things of language, but they're so subtle
well, in any kind of propaganda thing, when the country goes to war, you know, the slurs, you know, against the, you know, the Japanese and the, you know, the Koreans and the Vietnamese, to dehumanize. Why? So we feel okay about killing them.
Because there's an idolatry of something, and yeah, those people might be getting in the way, which is the dehumanization process.
And I think,
Peyton, any thoughts on this, the racial issue?
Yeah, too many, but I'll share a few. I think we just fall into the categories that the world gives us for people. And I think what Matt's getting at is, you know, and then there's language attached to that. So you plug in the word that identifies those people. When really the Bible gives us one category, imago Dei. There's your category. And then from there it gets worked out as that's your brother, that's your sister. Go work it. You know, I'm raising daughters and sons. And what do I say to them every day? Work it out. Go work it out with your brother. Go work it out with your sister. You know, and I feel like that's God saying to us over and over again. I'll tell you, so I taught at Long Beach Poly High School for a lot of years. 5,000 kids in the inner city. The demographics break down, you know, 20% Asian, 22% Latino, you know, just like it's this perfect cross section of humanity. You walk down the halls during class period, you stick your head in any room and you go, oh man, you know, there's black, white, brown, you know, I mean, it's like, it's all there. I taught on a second floor with this big catwalk that surrounded this old fashioned quad of the school. That lunch bell would ring, students come out, and all of a sudden you go, oh, there's the Hispanic kids, there's the black kids, there's the Asian kids, there's the little blonde surfer kids, there's the band nerds, there's the science geeks, you know, and it didn't always break down on racial lines, but you just saw that inclination to gather with, okay, these are my people. These people are like me for whatever marker. And again, I just, you know, I think the call of the hour is to probably walk away from the people that we think are like us to whoever that group is next door that we, for whatever reason, we've thought are not like us. And I want to, and I say that even with a bit of caution. Actually, I think I'm in the middle of a text conversation with somebody right now that was kind of advocating for the church to go out and engage, and I'm not going to name the group, but this group of people, this is what the church has got to do. We've got to go get those people, you know. And there's something in my spirit that goes, I know that's well-intentioned. I know there's a heart behind it that's good, but it's using that same thing of categorizing and then labeling, as Matt just said, those people in the name of mission, in the name, you know, but still it's like, well, why don't, if we meet a guy named John who is in that category, then befriend him because he's John and he's, you know, my brother. Yeah, the categorization thing.
Yeah, well, that's the stereotype, right? That's the classic where you carry a whole raft of presuppositions about a particular, and it really hinders the developing an authentic relationship because that person's got to get past those things that may or may not be true. You know, it's life. You know, and that's what Jesus is that is what Jesus is saying, is recognizing the essential value of everybody and relating to them honestly and authentically. So let's go on. Let's talk about sexism, and this kind of leads into the next section, lust and all that. But you know, the sexification. Now, as a man, I'll talk about women, and I'm going to be not going to talk from a woman's perspective at all. Kelly, glad you're here.
Great week to invite your daughter. Good job.
I know. You know, but adolescent boys, and how the culture boy, talk about the classic stereotype of what a woman is and what a woman is about. Boys come out of their teenage years absolutely categorically clueless unless they have a wise mother and father. I mean, that's just huge. Kelly, any thoughts about that?
Yes. Well, I think I was reading something recently and it was like, why do we expect our girls to behave in a way to protect themselves instead of saying boys treat women like an equal or treat, girls as
Human beings, human beings,
not as something to conquer or to
objects of your desire. Yep.
Right. And so I think there is a shift that needs to happen, which I think sometimes the church says, well, girls, you have to do your best so that, you don't cause your brothers to stumble. But it's like, well, I think to redirect is to say, boys, like, let's talk about humanity. Let's talk about your sisters in Christ. Kind of what you're saying, Matthew. Like, yeah, we're Imago Dei, we're brothers and sisters. And so I think that's where it can feel really violent, is when you're like almost blaming women for living their life of like, oh, why can't you be less than? Why can't you have a sense of control? Instead of saying, men, this is something that you need to figure out about how you're viewing these women. And I think that's a big part of the conversation.
Even, yeah, gosh, I mean, and again, I'm kind of going back to that contrast of that I, thou, I, it. Like, our culture has completely objectified women and treated them as its, even to the point where there is this expectation of what a woman should look like, what her body should look like, what she should sound like, what she should be able to do, responsibilities or skills, or how she's supposed to, handle herself. Like, there is a kind of model or object that our culture has even placed heavily upon women, to the point where it's, if they're not living up to that model, now it's, something's wrong with them, or now they're being treated as its, and they're being talked about like they are commodities and objects and not as human. And even then, women, I think, can feel then guilty for not living up to whatever those standards, because it's the woman's fault. It's not necessarily the man's fault, not necessarily the culture's fault. It's the woman's fault. And so the dehumanization that, we've done to women is, again, like, you fill in the you fool that Jesus is talking about. We fill in you blank. We have a whole word bank of words that are used to describe women when they're not being whatever it is that we expect them to be. Right. And so it's, why is it just women who are responsible for this? How did we get here? Even within the church, we're more concerned about a man feeling guilty. We prioritize a man feeling guilty, or not feeling guilty, over, valuing and listening to a woman's opinion or thoughts, on something.
Yeah. And I think more than sexuality, even just a woman's ability to be used, even by God. Like, I've had instances where my husband and I were in ministry together, and they'll maybe ask him all the questions. I'm like, hey, I'm here too. I have something to say. God uses me. And there was an instance where someone asked, like, oh, do you lead the women's ministry? It's like, well, no, I lead the ministry. And there's men involved also. But some people might think, well, women should only lead women, but men can lead women and men. And so you just kind of ask, okay, so, what is that saying about the value or the ability of a woman compared to a man? And there's so much in that. But I think even the subtleties of, when we're sharing, maybe Matt, I guess, asked the question, or like, oh, can I talk to your husband? Like, well, sure, but is there something I can help you with? Or, things like that. It just feels like you're always kind of going up against assumptions, or kind of like the normative thought of men are kind of like, men have the mic and women's mic is only directed towards women. And I just wonder, is that really how God He really made us in that way.
We can chew on this forever and ever and ever. I mean,
There might be part two potentially.
yeah. Well,
Yeah.
lust is next time, right? So we'll go at it from a different angle, but mental models, right? These deep conceptual structures that we just presume is the way things are. Well, maybe that's a function of the fall and not of creation. And the Lord wants to get us back to what he intended in creation. And so Jesus takes the opportunity, you've heard it said, thou shalt not kill, right? He's looking us in the eye, but I'm telling you, you objectify another human being, you do anything to diminish my Father's value that he invested in that creature, you are going to burn in hell. Okay. Jesus, whoa, Jesus, calm down. Jesus, calm down. I'm not going to calm down, right? I mean, that's what he's saying. And now we come to the big bugaboo. Well, these are all bugaboos, man, but I mean, politics, Republicans and Democrats. Man, talk about contemporary stereotypes that are just, fresh and intense. Back in the fall, before the election, man, I put Republican, Democrat up on the screen and say, you pick one over the other, you're playing the devil's game. And I got into a fair amount of trouble, because guys, this is a trap. This is a trap. But the whole country, the church included, has just been swept in to this profound objectification of our fellow citizens, and who knows where it's going to end.
And it's so hard because we don't see an alternative. That's just what is normalized, is this or that, them or us. And there doesn't seem to be a way. There's the Jesus way, but it's not modeled very often. And so it feels, people are often like, well, I don't know what else to do. This is what is presented to me, and I'm going to pick a side because that's safe and comfortable.
I think this is really, for me, where we are with the spiritual disciplines matters deeply. Because you used the term mental models a moment ago, Kyle, and what you're saying, like, what's the way we do this? I would just say very simply, compare your hours in front of your choice of favorite cable news networks and your hours in front of the Bible, and what's forming your thoughts. Let's start with things like that. What's the first thing you do in the morning? Is it scrolling, or is it lectio divina? For me, this is and I'm not saying as someone who's figured it out, but it's like, how do I begin to snip the wires of the bomb and build a machine that's supposed to work correctly as it was intended to? And to me, it's the habituation of those mental models. So take any of those issues. How am I learning? How am I learning about Black people? Well, I watched a story about BLM last night on the news. I don't learn anything about Black people. It's like, really? Or, how do I know about Asian American people? Well, I read, and it's like, no, go know Black people and know Asian, and there's a challenge in a little town in Tehachapi like that. Maybe not so much on a college campus that's diverse and all that. But, all right, in that case, let's do a little extra work. But I think it's recognizing where we're receiving nurture, where we're forming the models. Sexism. What forms my thoughts and feelings and opinions of women? Is it my wife and daughters who I live with? Or is it the several alternatives I could find, again, on this device? It's just, I think we have to take it back to those embodied practices that become habit. Yeah. And to me, that's just where it's got to be made real. It's got to be made real. Otherwise, we can kind of pontificate on all this stuff, but we're not going to be transformed.
I'll say, as we engage with the Bible, I don't know if I've shared this story before. I don't think I have here, but there was a time where I reread through the New Testament, but I decided when I read it, I would point out anytime it said where someone was from, right? And I considered, the historical context. Okay, we have two individual, Jesus is from Nazareth. He's from, what does that mean that he was from Nazareth? Or what does that mean that he was from Galilee? What does it mean? Are there things going on here of people even interacting with one another? What were the relationships like between these two towns or these two groups of people, right? And having an eye to even engage with scripture to see, okay, when Jesus tells the story of the Good Samaritan, like what's going on there? What are the ethnic context or the societal context in that day that makes that story even come to life in a new way, right? And I think even as we read the scripture with that lens, even in Acts, when you see like the rivalry that's going on between, was it the Hellenistic like women who were being like, there was favoritism that was being shown because they weren't given the same amount of food. Like there are stories that are rich within the Bible that speak to our issues today, right? And we can see them, like just reading through and paying attention, underlying and saying, oh, there's a city, someone's from this place, someone's from this region interacting with this individual from this place in this city in this region. What's going on here? Even around when Peter denied Jesus in the root, what revealed that he was from Galilee was an accent, was because they were able to point out from a crowd when he was in Jerusalem, he's not from here, right? There's something, as he looks different and sounds different, right? And so there's so much in.
Oh yeah.
I encourage and I challenge people to say, reread your Bible, reread those passages, pay attention to where people are from and how they interact with one another. And then with that lens, consider what Jesus said, right? In regards to some of those things. And then we should have some insight now to navigate these issues and conversations and problems that are happening and have been happening, today.
Yeah, and of course, and as Paul heads out into the Mediterranean and bringing the gospel of the kingdom everywhere, in Galatians, there's no Jew, no Greek, Scythian, barbarian, or slave, no male or female. I mean, absolutely gutting our tendency to objectify, to dehumanize. Okay, we got to head for the barn here. So, but let's take seriously how seriously Jesus means this. Read 23 and 24, somebody.
Hey guys, I do have to head out, so Kelly's gonna wrap it up for me so I can jump.
Yes. Thanks, Matthew.
All right, no problem.
Thanks, Matthew. Good seeing you.
Okay, 23. If you're offering your gift at the altar and there remember that your brother has something against you, leave your gift there before the altar and go. First be reconciled to your brother and then come and offer your gift. Right.
Religious ritual, attention to God. Man, if you have aught against somebody, stop and make it right. Because Jesus takes his right relationship is a non-negotiable, essential, in our life with the Lord. I don't think Jesus can be any clearer than that. Leave church and deal with the issue, then come back.
Just to speak to the power of the Bible, this verse literally stopped me cold a couple of months ago. And it was like, as I read it, I went, I have 2 phone calls to make and a breakfast to schedule. And actually at that breakfast, I actually read this verse. I said, this is why I'm here. And I got, we've got to work through this.
Yeah.
Well, and you hear people say sometimes like, oh, pray for me because I'm having a hard time loving this person. So I'm just going to pray that God really just helps me to change my heart. It's like, okay, well, why don't you go to that person and have a conversation? Because you could pray all day, but sometimes God asks us to be obedient and take a step. And so this is a good practice.
That's scary. That's risky. As a pastor, right? Triangulating, right? Kelly, has a problem with Matthew. So what does Kelly do?
you?
Kelly goes to Kyle and says, Pastor Kyle, I got a problem with Matthew. Will you go fix Matthew? Right. And my usual rule of thumb is I'll say, Kelly, you have 24 hours to contact Matthew and let him know you have a problem. After 24 hours, if you haven't connected with Matthew, I will call Matthew and let him know that you have a problem with him. Then he
Why we're both on the podcast today? Is that what we're this here? Kelly, you have a problem?
Right. It's reckon. I mean, that the devil gets into that, and that's how this deep darkness takes root, especially in the fellowship, in the community of people where there's triangulation and codependence everywhere, and no one's being honest because everybody is using everybody else, and it's horrible.
Well, it shows that Jesus did, that verse, like, I don't care about your sacrifice, right? I want your heart. And so when it's like, oh, I'm going to church and I'm still worshiping God, it's like, oh, that's good. But also you need to love your brother and your sister. And if there is an issue, a part of loving Jesus is having those conversations, but we can over spiritualize and say, well, I'm just going to go to the worship service and that's what makes me right with God. But when we're right with each other, that honors God.
And you said something interesting. You said where we pray for our hearts to change towards someone. I know you're going to have to help me out with this. I think this is a line in the Phillips family household. You don't feel your way to acting, you act your way to feeling. Is that the line?
That's the line.
Kelly's laughing. So I've heard that.
Yeah. So and that's where the I thou versus I it, right? You offend me. The easiest thing in the world is for me to now define you by this offense, and you may not even know you offended me,
Mm-hmm.
right? And this barrier is created versus, the honest give and take. Oh, I'm sorry. And which brings us to wrap it up. 25 and 26. I'm going to read 25 and 26.
Reconcile quickly with your adversary while you are still on the way to court. Otherwise, he may hand you over to the judge, and the judge may hand you over to the officer, and you may be thrown into prison. Truly, I tell you, you will not get out until you have paid the last penny.
Make every effort to make it right. It may not go down the way you think it's going to go down. Nothing is more important to Jesus than we learn to relate to human beings in that dynamic mutuality, resisting the lure to objectify and all these issues and a lot more we can talk about. I don't know about you guys, but my response to all of that is, Jesus, I need help. I'm just exhausted thinking about the ways okay, Chris and I, we're cleaning the floor, right? we got two golden retrievers and one golden doodle. You got to clean the floor every once in a while. I mean, move everything out of the house and hair everywhere, Okay, Chris is relational. She just wants to be with me. I am, get her done. Before you know it, I'm snapping at Chris because she's moving too slow and making an idiot out of myself. And Chris is no wilting flower. I married the right woman. There's no holding grudges in the Phillips family. If my head needs to come off, it comes off right now, right? And Chris said, "You're being an idiot." And my response was, "You're right. I'm being an idiot. I'm sorry." Because she calls him, as she sees him. But what was I doing? Chris could have been a broom I was using to clean the floor. I mean, that's how I was treating her. And she said, "Stop it. I'm not a broom." Oh yeah, honey, you're right. I forgot. So Jesus. She's kind. What's that?
It's the humility of acknowledging, sometimes with all these issues, sometimes you're going to make a mistake. And it doesn't mean there's no hope for you. It just means you have to reconcile and come before the Lord and confess and say, I want to see this person as you made them. help me to do that. Teach me how to do that. And I think that that's such a big part of it, is that humility.
Well, I just think this piece is really timely, for where we're at post-COVID. I'm reading a lot of things, right now where people are trying to gauge what's going to be different now, as we re-enter the stream of life, or, whatever we're calling it, saying, at least in the United States, where COVID's onslaught is slowing. A lot of people are saying, oh, it's going to be a great reset. It's going to be a renaissance. This is going to be a reimagining, that's kind of the hopeful way, or we're going to see more of this or more of that, whatever it is. And I just think in between whatever was, whatever's come, there is this opportunity for reconciliation that begins with recognizing the need for reconciliation. Like people, it's been I'll just say this, it's been a hard year, and people have made tough choices, and there's a lot of hurt feelings, and then more, for spouses and families, we've just been locked up together for a long time, and things have been said that should not have been said, and habits have formed that. So I just think there's a real import and timeliness to reconciliation and thinking about that seriously. Because I think we want to move past it. Well, the old thing's gone, let's start the new thing. But because of the way we get caught up in, yeah, but you wronged me then, or I know I wronged you, but I'd rather not talk about it. We've got to go back to that place where, hey, I offended you. I know I did. Or, hey, you offended me. You might not know you did.
Right.
But I think for there to be a real restart, we're called to this kind of work.
The spiritual discipline for this week is forgiveness, right? And Adele Calhoun gives probably the best definition of forgiveness I've ever seen in this little handy dandy spiritual disciplines handbook. If you haven't got it, please get it at your nearest bookstore, right?
And I don't even get a kickback on that.
That's right. That's right. Right. I mean, listen to this definition. I love this. To forgive is to condemn a wrong. And that's what I love about it. Hey, it's wrong. To forgive is to condemn a wrong, spare the wrongdoer hatred, revenge, and self-righteous indignation by joining them to Jesus's own forgiving heart. I love that. Yep, it was wrong. I release the anger, and I'm bringing you to Jesus, right where I live. Man.
Kyle, what does Calhoun identify as the desire that leads to that discipline? Desire before the definition.
To lean into Jesus's forgiving heart and stop the cycle of vengeance. To lean into Jesus's forgiving heart and stop the cycle of vengeance. Yeah, it's good. All right, taking forgiveness seriously, being straight up, being honest about how we experience one another, not out of any sense of condemnation, not condemning the sacred life who has offended you, but recognizing that the wrong has been done, but there's grace. Oh, baby, there's grace. All right. Well, someone pray, and we'll wrap this up.
We have a special opportunity to have Kelly pray for us.
Okay, I'll pray. Jesus, yes, we come before you and acknowledge the sin in our hearts, the sin of humanity, Lord, to dehumanize those who you love and you've created intentionally and with your image. And God, we confess on behalf of our own hearts and on behalf of those in our lives, Lord, that we often think of people as means to get to an end. And so, Lord, I just pray you would help us to see the humanity in others. God, would you show us the log in our eye as we look at other specks? Lord, would you help us to see what you want to redeem, what you want to correct, Lord, how you want us to ask for forgiveness and also forgive others. Lord, give us a togetherness that is powerful and shows the world that we're your disciples and that there's another way of being in this world. And so God, help us to do that. We can't do it in our flesh. We need your spirit to do that. So Lord, thanks for a good conversation. Pray more conversations would be had from these thoughts, these words, your word, Lord. We love you, and we thank you, Jesus. Amen.
Amen. All right, guys. Thanks.
Good. Thank you.
And thanks for listening, everybody.